Shattered Horizons, Part 1, The Forgotten Prisoner. The sterile white walls of Outpost Epsilon 9 breathed with a cold, mechanical silence. Rows of sealed laboratories stretched like veins through the moon's rocky interior, each housing secrets that were never meant to be discovered. Dominic Valerio moved through the corridors with the practiced invisibility of a maintenance worker, someone designed to be overlooked. His fingers traced the diagnostic pad, checking environmental systems that kept the most sensitive areas climate-controlled and secure. 3 years into his contract, Dominic had learned the art of purposeful invisibility. No questions asked, no curiosities pursued. Until today, a subtle fluctuation in the biometric readings caught his attention. Most technicians would have ignored it. A millisecond's deviation meant nothing in the vast complexity of research station systems. But Dominic's past hadn't allowed him the luxury of complacency. He zoomed into Sector 7's restricted wing, where even maintenance logs were heavily redacted. The glass chamber came into view, and something inside him fractured. She wasn't human, not entirely. Her form was too perfect, too symmetrical to be natural, a living sculpture of biological engineering. Pale iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer between translucent and solid, intricate biocircuitry visible beneath the surface like silver threads. Her eyes, impossibly large and dark, held a depth that spoke of profound suffering. Kira, the name was etched into a clinical data panel, accompanied by a series of alphanumeric codes that meant nothing and everything. Days, weeks, possibly months she had been here, suspended in this transparent prison. No movement beyond the occasional involuntary muscle response suggested by the medical monitors. Sensors tracked her vital signs with ruthless precision. She was alive, but barely existing. Dominic's hand pressed against the glass, a gesture both reflexive and forbidden. He knew the protocols, knew the consequences of even acknowledging her existence. Unauthorized personnel who showed interest in restricted subjects disappeared, not fired, simply removed. His own history was a tapestry of running and hiding. Once a promising xenobiological researcher whose ethical stands had cost him everything, Dominic now survived by being utterly unremarkable. This job was his sanctuary, his protection. Yet something about her defied every survival instinct he possessed. The monitoring systems showed her cortical activity as a series of muted pulses, not comatose, but trapped in a liminal state between consciousness and complete shutdown. Experimental suppression protocols, he recognized, designed to keep a subject compliant, controlled. A scar traced her jawline, not a surgical mark, but something more visceral, a story etched into her very being. Her fingers, when they twitched almost imperceptibly, revealed microimplants that suggested radical biomechanical modifications. Who was she? What crime could justify this level of dehumanization? For the first time in years, Dominic felt the dangerous spark of curiosity reigniting. The same curiosity that had once destroyed his academic career now burned with unexpected intensity. Her eyes suddenly moved, fractionally, just enough to lock with his. In that moment, everything changed. Dominic's hands moved with practiced precision, bypassing security protocols he'd learned during years of working within the station's intricate systems. Each movement was calculated, deliberate, a dance of survival he'd perfected through necessity. The glass chamber housing Kira hummed with suppression fields, bioelectric dampeners designed to keep her docile, controlled. As he worked, her eyes followed him, not with fear, not with desperation, but with an unsettling intelligence that spoke of depths he couldn't yet comprehend. "I'm going to get you out," he whispered, more to himself than to her. The words felt like a commitment, a point of no return. 12 minutes. That was the window he'd calculated between security rotations. 12 minutes to disconnect the life support systems, override the molecular restraints, and create a corridor of escape that wouldn't immediately trigger alarms. The first layer of restraints dissolved with a soft hiss. Kira's body, previously rigid, began to move with a fluidity that defied her prolonged confinement. Biomechanical implants beneath her skin pulsed with a soft, silvery light, adaptive systems coming back to life. "Can you walk?" Dominic asked, knowing the answer might determine both their fates. Her response was unexpected, not verbal but a surge of neural communication that hit him like a wave. fragments of thought, impressions, a landscape of memories too complex to fully process. Pain, isolation, experiment, survival. He understood then that she was far more than a prisoner. She was a weapon, a living algorithm of biological complexity that someone had tried and failed to fully contain. The station's lower maintenance tunnels would be their escape route. Dominic had mapped these passages during years of routine maintenance, knowing they could become an exit strategy if the worst ever happened. He hadn't imagined the worst would involve rescuing an extraordinary being from a top-secret research facility. Kira's hand touched his as they moved through the narrow maintenance corridor. The contact was electric, quite literally. A subtle charge passed between them, a communication more intimate than words. She was downloading something, scanning, understanding. "You're risking everything." Her voice emerged not as sound, but as a direct neural impression in his mind. Why? Dominic's memories flashed, his own past of institutional betrayal, of scientific ethics sacrificed for power. Because some systems are meant to be broken. Alarms began to pulse. Red emergency lighting transformed the metallic corridors into veins of warning. They were now truly fugitives. The first security response team would be dispatched within minutes. Dominic had planned for this. Emergency environmental suits tucked away in a maintenance alcove, false credentials that might buy them moments of confusion, a modified transport pod in a rarely used docking bay. Kira moved differently now. No longer the passive subject of experiments, but a living weapon unfolding her potential. Her biomechanical systems were recalibrating, adapting to freedom with each passing moment. As they reached the transport pod, her hand intertwined with his, not just for support, but as a declaration. A connection that transcended the physical, a neural link that promised protection, understanding, potential. The pod's engines hummed to life. Outside, the moon's rocky landscape began to blur. They were running, but more importantly, they were choosing, together. The abandoned research outpost on Kepler-7's third moon provided temporary sanctuary. Rust-colored dust storms whipped across barren landscapes, creating a natural camouflage that obscured their presence from potential trackers. Dominic worked methodically, adapting their stolen transport pod into a makeshift shelter. His hands moved with a precision born of years improvising survival, while Kira watched, her biomechanical systems constantly scanning, analyzing, processing. "They'll use quantum trackers," she communicated through their developing neural link. The connection had grown more complex since their escape, a symbiotic communication that blurred the lines between thought and speech. He understood now that she was more than a prisoner, more than an experiment. Kira was a living repository of knowledge, a biological algorithm so complex that entire research facilities had been dedicated to understanding her potential. Fragments of her past leaked through their connection. Glimpses of laboratories, of painful calibrations, of scientists who saw her as nothing more than a data point. But beneath those memories burned something else, a fierce, unbreakable spirit of survival. Their physical proximity intensified their neural link. When Dominic's fingers brushed against her skin while patching a tear in her adaptive suit, the contact sent cascades of information, memories, emotions, a lifetime of suppressed experiences flooding their shared consciousness. He saw her first moments of awareness, the cold sterility of her initial creation, the countless tests that had reduced her to a series of biological equations, and yet she had never truly been broken. "Why me?" Dominic asked, both verbally and through their neural connection. "Why did you let me help you?" Kira's response was a complex tapestry of emotion and memory, recognition, a shared understanding of institutional betrayal, but more than that, a profound, inexplicable connection that transcended logical explanation. Their first true moment of intimacy wasn't physical, but neurological, a complete sharing of consciousness that left them both vulnerable and strengthened. Outside, the dust storm intensified. Quantum scanners from the research facility would be sweeping the region, searching for any trace of their biosignatures. Dominic knew their window of safety was rapidly closing. "We need to move," he said, checking their modified navigation systems. "The next solar cycle will provide a brief window of electromagnetic interference. We can use that to mask our departure." Kira's hand touched his, a gesture that was simultaneously a neural download and a deeply personal connection. Her biomechanical systems interfaced with their makeshift navigation, calculating escape trajectories with superhuman precision. Their relationship defied traditional understanding. Not quite lovers, not merely allies. They were something entirely new, two beings whose survival now depended on a connection that went beyond physical or emotional boundaries. As the dust storm reached its peak, Dominic felt Kira's consciousness merge with his. Protection, survival, connection. These were no longer individual concepts, but a shared mission. The research facility would be hunting them, but they would not be caught, not again. Their pod hummed to life, preparing for the next stage of their impossible journey. The abandoned research station on Meridian Prime loomed like a forgotten monument to scientific ambition. Kira's biomechanical systems pulsed with an intense, silvery light as they approached, recognition and anticipation merging into a complex emotional landscape. "This is where it began," she communicated through their neural link, her thoughts a kaleidoscope of fragmented memories. Dominic understood now that their escape was more than a simple flight from captivity. Kira was a key, a living algorithm of unprecedented complexity that could reshape entire galactic power structures. The station's main research hub stood silent, its once pristine corridors now covered in a thin layer of cosmic dust and abandoned equipment. Emergency lighting flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to breathe with forgotten secrets. Kira's hand intertwined with Dominic's, the contact triggering a massive neural download. Memories flooded their shared consciousness, a history far more complex than any simple prisoner's narrative. She was the result of a classified project called Horizon Synthesis, a biological computing system designed to process and predict galactic-scale events. More than an experiment, she was a living prediction engine, capable of analyzing multidimensional probability streams that no conventional computer could comprehend. They wanted to control the future. Kira's thoughts cascaded through their connection. Not just predict it, manipulate it. The research facility had been attempting to create a biological algorithm capable of anticipating and redirecting major galactic events. Kira was their ultimate weapon, a sentient computational system with the ability to see through time itself. Dominic felt the weight of her revelation. The research facility wouldn't simply hunt them, they would destroy entire star systems to recapture her. A sudden alarm triggered, their presence had been detected. The station's dormant defense systems began to activate, mechanical tendrils emerging from hidden compartments. "We don't have much time," Dominic said, both verbally and through their neural link. Kira's biomechanical systems responded instantaneously. Her body became a living weapon, adaptive circuits spinning complex defensive patterns. Where human reflexes would fail, she moved with impossible precision, redirecting energy pulses, disrupting mechanical tracking systems. Their physical intimacy had become something more profound. Each touch was a language of survival, of shared consciousness. When Dominic's hand pressed against her skin, it was more than a gesture of comfort, it was a complete neural synchronization. The station's main control room revealed the true scope of the Horizon Synthesis project. Holographic displays flickered with probability matrices, showing potential galactic futures that could be manipulated, redirected, controlled. They didn't just want to predict the future, Kira communicated, her thoughts a storm of complex emotions. They wanted to own it. Dominic understood the magnitude of their situation. Kira wasn't just a prisoner, she was a living weapon that could reshape reality itself. And now, they were the only things standing between her and those who would use her as a tool of control. Mechanical defense systems converged, probability streams twisted and merged, their survival balanced on a knife's edge. But they would face it together. The quantum barrier between survival and annihilation was razor-thin. Dominic and Kira stood at the heart of the abandoned research station, their bodies and consciousness intertwined in a way that defied traditional understanding of connection. Pursuit ships converged outside, a constellation of technological predators seeking to reclaim their most valuable asset. But Kira was no longer just an asset. She was a living revolution. "We have one chance," she communicated through their neural link, the thought a complex algorithm of potential outcomes. Billions of probability streams condensed into a single, razor-sharp moment of decision. Dominic's hand pressed against her, their biomechanical and biological systems synchronizing. Years of survival, of hiding, of running, everything had led to this moment. The station's central core pulsed with dormant energy. Kira's adaptive systems began to interface directly with the station's quantum mainframe. What had once been a prison became their weapon. Probability streams exploded around them. Potential futures flickered like quantum ghosts, some of destruction, some of liberation. Kira's consciousness expanded, becoming something more than human, more than machine. They created me to predict and control. Her thoughts resonated through their shared consciousness. But prediction is not control. The research facility's primary vessel approached, a massive quantum drive ship designed to neutralize any threat. Standard protocols would involve complete destruction of the station and everything within it. But Kira was anything but standard. Her biomechanical systems began to rewrite the very fabric of quantum probability. Defense networks collapsed. Tracking systems imploded. The pursuing ships found themselves caught in impossible loops of temporal distortion. Dominic felt their connection deepen, not just as rescuer and rescued, not as lovers in the traditional sense, but as something entirely new, two beings whose survival and purpose had become inextricably linked. Their neural connection transcended physical touch. Every memory, every fear, every moment of hope merged into a singular consciousness. Kira's adaptive systems had found more than an escape route. They had found freedom. The station's quantum core reached critical resonance. Not destruction, not surrender, but transformation. A massive energy pulse erupted, not as a weapon, but as a declaration. The pursuing ships were displaced, not destroyed, but scattered across different probability streams. Memories were altered, tracking systems erased. They were free. But freedom, Kira understood, was more complex than escape. It was about choice, about potential. As the last quantum echoes faded, Dominic looked at her, not with fear of her power, not with scientific curiosity, but with a profound understanding that transcended human comprehension. "Where do we go now?" he asked, both verbally and through their neural link. Kira's response was a cascade of potential futures, infinite, uncontrolled, alive. "Everywhere," she communicated, her biomechanical systems pulsing with a soft, silver light. "We go everywhere." The universe opened before them, not as a battlefield, not as a system to be controlled, but as a landscape of infinite possibility. Their journey was just beginning.